Hey y'all, I'm Erin and welcome to my channel here at Erin Enchanted. I'm so glad that you guys are here today. Grab a cup of coffee or tea. I'm drinking coffee today because it's been one of those days. And come and join me. I'm going to talk about and rate all of the books that I read in October. You guys, it has truly been a day. I was trying to edit another video and I've been having all of these issues with my computer. Anyway, they are actually coming out to replace the motherboard on my desktop on on Friday. So I'm really behind on editing some of my other videos. So you guys might see a few videos just pop, pop, pop coming up. Today, I'm going to talk about and rate the 12 books I read this October. I was really proud of myself. I read several middle grades. I listened to a few audiobooks. I've got a little bit of YA, some mysteries in there. So I hope you guys can find a few books that maybe you want to add to your shelf in this video. And if you have read any of them, I would love to hear about it down in the comments and what you guys thought. I'm going to talk about these books in the order that I read them. So get your coffee, let's get started. These first few books I actually read during my spooky readathon, and I have a video for that, so if you want to see my reaction to these in real time, you can go and check that one out. Alright guys, the first book that I read this month was The Glass Witch, which I actually borrowed from my local library and had to take it back, but I really want to order my own copy to put on my bookshelf because I loved it that much. This story is about a young witch named Addie who accidentally, on purpose, activates a family curse. So the story sets out in this little autumnal town. It's so cute. And she meets a lot of different characters on the way, and she's basically on this journey to break the curse so she doesn't die. Anyways, I loved all of the characters in this story. I loved the representation in this book as well. I just thought it was beautifully written. It was spooky, but it was also very humorous. Like, I was laughing out loud at some of the moments. I would definitely give this middle grades novel a 5 out of 5 stars because I just loved every single minute that I was reading this book. The second book that I read this month was a spooky middle grade ghost story, and that was Scritch Scratch. And you guys, this was really, really, really spooky. I read this in one night and it did not disappoint. So the book is about a girl named Claire. She's very science-minded. She's not interested in paranormal activity. However, her dad runs these ghost tours in Chicago. So she ends up having to work with him a little bit one night. And from there, she basically gets haunted. One thing that I love about this book is it blends Chicago history with a ghost tour. So I found myself constantly like Googling while I was reading this, like looking up the original ghost story and finding out a lot of things about Chicago that I did not know. I'm not going to lie, I would have loved a little more oomph at the end of the story, but overall I enjoyed it so much and I would give it probably a 4 out of 5 stars. I think that's what I rated it in my spooky readathon, so a 4, 4.5, but yeah. I think this is really great if you want a quick read, you want to be creeped out, but not like so creeped out that you're completely frightened, you know, but I was like checking the doors at my apartment. So there is that. Okay, next up, number 3 is Legends and Lattes. This is a cozy fantasy read. It is marketed as a book for adults, but honestly, I think this could be like a middle grade story. That was just me. If you watched my spooky readathon, you know that this did not end up being my favorite story. It was fine. Like, I didn't like hate it. It took me a while to get into, and then I finally kind of got into it, and then I kept waiting for something a little bit more. I know it was not supposed to have these big like ups and downs and thrills. It's marketed as a low stakes book, but I never got to a point where I really cared about the characters. it was just okay for me. So maybe cozy fantasy is not my thing. I think if you really love coffee vibes and you want something to listen to in the background and that's your jam, you might really like this book. It just wasn't for me. I might try reading the second one. I don't know. We'll just have to see. So yeah, that's what I think of Legends and Lattes. I know a lot of people loved it. It was not for me. So moving on. The next book that I read in October has to be one of my favorites, and that is the Gothic horror story, The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. This book takes place in the early 19th century in Mexico, and it happens right after the Mexican War for Independence. And I absolutely loved the setting of this story. I think it just added to the overall creepiness of it. And it's about a woman named Beatrice who loses her father during the war, and she ends up getting married to a man for security and moves out to his big old mansion in the middle of nowhere, and it ends up being a haunted house. Beatrice ends up enlisting the help of a local priest named Andres, and so the book is actually dual point of view, and it goes back and forth between Beatrice's and Andres' point of view of what is happening in the house, and they are trying to do an exorcism of this haunted house and figure out who is haunting it, why are they haunting it. It is bone chilling. Like, if you want to be creeped out, you should buy this book. I would recommend this book to anyone who loved Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, or any horror fans who like their stories to take place in a historical setting. Definitely a 5 out of 5 for me. The fifth book that I read this month is heartwarming. It is one of my favorite stories, and that is Sleepy Hollow by Juno Black. Guys, I'm definitely going to read this entire series. It is so good. It takes place in the forest, and all of our characters are woodland creatures, and they all have jobs just like you and I. Vera Vixen is the reporter in this community, and she ends up investigating the death of Otto the Toad. I enjoyed the cozy mystery vibes and the humor in this story. It's so cute, you guys. It is like Beatrice Potter meets Nancy Drew. I was captivated the entire time. I was surprised at the ending, so it couldn't have been more perfect, more autumnal. I already have the second book in the series on its way to me, so yeah. Okay, next up I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. And this is a YA mystery thriller. And y'all, I know there was a lot of hype about this book, and I see why. It was so captivating. I read this within 24 hours, which that usually does not happen. I mean, maybe for some middle grades books, but as far as a YA, I mean, it was one of those ones I could not put down. I was reading up into the middle of the night just so that I could finish it. It was extremely fast paced, and my emotions were all over the place. It was like a big roller coaster. I love trying to solve mysteries along with protagonists in the stories I read, and that's definitely how this ended up for me. I have to say the ending, I half predicted. I'll say that. I don't want to give anything away, but if you're not sure what this book is about, I'll give you a little spiel, but I also talked about it in my October TBR. And it's about a girl named Pip, and she decides for her senior capstone project to basically open this closed case about a girl in her hometown that had been murdered 5 years before. And we quickly find out that there are a lot of people in this town who had motive to kill Andy, which is the girl who was murdered. I found that the ending was really satisfying. I would highly recommend this book if you are in a reading slump, because like I said, it's just a real page turner. And again, it's part of a series, so I already have the second book. But yeah, I loved this book. The seventh book that I read this month is magical, it is whimsical, it is everything my autumn dreams are made of, and that is the book Ravenfall, which is a middle grades spooky fantasy mystery. There's definitely a little bit of all of those elements in this story, and it is lovely. So this story centers around a girl named Anna, who lives in I want to say a haunted inn. It's definitely a sentient inn. It has its own personality, and the inn is basically on the border of our world and the other world. She ends up helping her new friend Colin, who is trying to locate his brother and find out who murdered his parents. It takes place in the most beautiful autumnal town. I love when they talk about food and all things autumn. It's just so cute. Okay, I'm just gonna read you guys a little autumnal excerpt. Orange paper lanterns hung from the ceiling among the teardrop lights, and the tables are draped with shimmering cloths. Jack-o'-lanterns with intricate designs sit next to autumn wreaths and red apples. Scattered among the tables and the lights above are glass figurines in the shapes of bats, cats, and other magical creatures. They also talk a lot about food, which I do not hate at all. Here's just a little example. Every counter has something on it, from fresh baked pumpkin pies to homemade marshmallows shaped as skeletons and Irish knots. They also talked about, there was this one drink and I was like, I need to make that, just like a pumpkin spice. Just everything so autumnal. I'll say that. And it takes place in October, and the big finale, if you will, is their Samhain party, which is on Halloween. This is the perfect read for October, and I highly recommend this book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. Next up, a book that was not on my October TBR, but I have been listening to on Audible for a little while now, is A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 5th book in the ACOTAR series, and I really enjoyed it. It is not my favorite of her books. I liked A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Wings and Ruin more than I liked A Court of Silver Flames. I just don't love Nesta. I said it. I said what I said. She is a very difficult character to like, considering the things that she has done in previous books. And this book was kind of from her and Cassian's point of view. I will say she grew on me as the story went on, but it was hard for me to get into because I disliked her so much. But I still enjoyed it. I'm invested in the series, so I'm really excited that she has some more books coming out in the future. So yeah, I would rate this maybe a 3.8 out of 5. I mean, I would probably round up to a 4 on Goodreads, but it definitely wasn't my favorite in the series. This next book I actually read with my 6-year-old nephew, and he absolutely loved this book, and that is Garlic and the Vampire by Bree Paulson. The artwork in this story is absolutely stunning. Let me show you guys a little bit more. In this story, our heroine, whose name is Garlic, goes to take on a vampire who has moved into the local village. This book is marketed as a middle grades graphic novel. I found that surprising because I found that the plot was a little bit lackluster. Again, my 6-year-old nephew really loved it, but I have taught 3rd and 5th grade, and even I think my 5th graders would be a little bit bored with the plot line, but they would probably really be into the artwork. So I really struggled with rating this. I loved the themes of courage and not judging a book by its cover. I would probably give the artwork a 5-star and the plot like a 2.5 star. So I don't know, probably like I would give this maybe a 3.5 star. Again, I think it's really wonderful to read if you have a young reader at home. I probably wouldn't read this just by myself again, and I probably will buy the 2nd book in this series, and I will read that with my nephew, and he absolutely loves these. So again, if you're just all about the art, get it. If you have a young reader at home, also recommend to get it. But if you really have a middle grade reader who loves a lot of plot, then this might not be for you. But I mean, look, it's just beautiful. So I will definitely be keeping this on my shelf. All right, guys, number 10 on my list is probably my most favorite book that I read all month, and that is the novel October, October by Katja Balin. And this is a middle grades whimsical story about a girl named October who lives in the woods with her dad, and her dad ends up getting hurt and she has to go live with her estranged mother in the city. And it really dives into family and forgiveness, and it is so beautifully written. This book made me feel my feelings, okay? I was teary-eyed many times while I was reading this book. In many ways, this book gave me a little bit of like Anne of Green Gables vibes, and that's just because the protagonist, October, has a huge imagination, and it just reminds me a lot of Anne and how she sees her surroundings. I love the setting of the woods. It is just beautifully written. If there is one book that you read out of all of the ones I talk about today, it would be this book. It is immaculate. It is beautiful. I will say that I read some of the reviews in Goodreads, and there were definitely people who read this story who were annoyed with how our protagonist October handled certain situations. And while I can understand that, I think it's really easy from an adult's perspective to think like, how could you act like that? Don't you see the bigger picture? But you have to think of this from a child's point of view and the trauma of what has happened in her life, how that has affected her and her choices. So anyways, I thought it was beautifully written. It is a wonderful story of family, reconciliation, change. Oh, y'all, get this book. Get this book. Book number 11 is a mystery thriller by Alice Feeney, and I actually listened to it on Audible, and that is the book Daisy Darker. I saw this recommended in several different places on the internet and on BookTube, and I had to read it, or listen to it, if you will. It actually takes place on Halloween Eve, which made it the perfect read for October. Daisy Darker is a locked room mystery with similar vibes as Agatha Christie's And Then There Was None. It is narrated by Daisy, and it alternates between two different timelines, the 1980s and 2004. The whole family becomes stranded in a coastal mansion on the Cornish coast when they come to visit their grandmother to celebrate her 80th birthday. She ends up reading her will, and then people start dying. So Daisy and her family are trying to figure out who is killing them off one by one. I will say I was definitely surprised at the ending. It really got me good. However, it was hard for me to wrap my head around the motive of the murderer. But overall, I enjoyed the book, and I would give this a 3.8 stars, probably rounded up to a 4. Yeah. All right, y'all, the last book that I read this October was so spooky, and I actually read it on Halloween, and that is the middle grades mystery thriller ghost story, The Haunting of Aveline Jones by Phil Hicks. First of all, can we just have a little cover appreciation? Look how autumnal that looks and spooky. The Haunting of Aveline Jones is the perfect middle grades ghost story. This is a spooky, gripping ghost story about a girl named Aveline Jones who is actually obsessed with ghosts. She ends up going to visit her Aunt Lillian in this small coastal town, and as soon as she gets there, things start to get creepy. The town is a little creepy. Aveline ends up coming across a book of local ghost stories, and she finds out that the previous owner of the book is a missing girl named Primrose Penberthy. That's a mouthful. Say that 3 times fast. Primrose Penberthy. Primrose Penberthy. I can't do it. Anyways, as soon as she reads some of the stories in this book, really strange things start to happen to her, and she thinks she's being haunted. Aveline and a few of her local friends end up trying to find out if there is any type of connection with her haunting and the missing girl. I really enjoyed this book. I read it in a day, actually in a night. I read this on Halloween night after I got back in from trick-or-treating with my nephews. I would definitely give this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Y'all, that is it for my October book wrap up, and I would love to hear if you have read any of these books, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you have any books that I need to read for next spooky season. And let's be honest, November is still spooky season. It is still autumn. I'm still in the creepy mood. It's just that time of year, especially down here in the South. Our leaves are just starting to change, so I could definitely use a few more recommendations for November. If you have those, drop them below. I would love to chat with you guys. If you want a list of the books that I talked about today, I will have a link down in the show notes on bookshop.org, and I will have a special bookshelf just for this video. All right, y'all, I'm heading out. It was nice to chat with you guys today. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until next time, stay enchanted. Bye.